Laurie Williams made a decision in 1959 that changed entertainment history. She enrolled her 8-year-old son, Robin, in every drama class, every improv workshop, every acting opportunity she could find. People asked her why. He was so young. Shouldn't he focus on regular school? She never told them the real reason. She never told them what she'd witnessed in the attic that day, her son performing a complete theatrical production to an audience of toy soldiers, doing dozens of voices, creating full characters, all while completely alone. She never told them that when Robin finally noticed her watching, he looked terrified, like he'd been caught doing something shameful. And she never told them what she'd realized in that moment. Her son had been so lonely for so long that he'd created an entire universe inside his head just to survive the silence of that mansion. The drama classes weren't about nurturing talent. They were about saving her son from disappearing completely into his own mind. But here's the tragic irony. Those classes taught Robin that performing for others felt better than being alone. And that lesson, that he was only valuable when he was making people laugh, would follow him for the next 55 years. Spring 1959, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. The Williams mansion sat on 2 acres of manicured lawns in one of Detroit's wealthiest suburbs. 40 rooms, 3 stories, staff quarters, a garage that could fit 6 cars. From the outside, it looked like a dream. From the inside, for 8-year-old Robin Williams, it felt like a museum. Beautiful, expensive, and utterly, devastatingly empty. Robin's father, Robert Fitzgerald Williams, was a senior executive at Ford Motor Company. He traveled constantly: Detroit, New York, Europe. When he was home, he was tired, distant, buried in paperwork. A good man, a provider, but not a presence. Robin's mother, Laurie McLaurin, was a former model with a sharp wit and an even sharper tongue. She had a social calendar that kept her busy with luncheons, charity events, country club gatherings. She loved her son, but love and attention, Robin was learning, were not the same thing. The mansion's 3rd-floor attic was Robin's kingdom. His parents had converted part of it into a playroom, thinking the space would make their only child happy. They'd filled it with toys, train sets, building blocks, and toy soldiers. Thousands of them, literally thousands, plastic armies from every era: Roman legionnaires, Civil War infantry, World War II paratroopers, medieval knights. Robin's father had been collecting them for years, thinking his son would enjoy them, and Robin did, but not the way his father imagined. For months, the household staff had been hearing strange sounds from the attic. Voices, multiple voices, different accents: British, Southern, German, New York tough guy. Sometimes there was laughter, sometimes arguing, sometimes what sounded like speeches or debates. The maid, Mrs. Henderson, mentioned it to Laurie one morning over coffee. "Mrs. Williams, I'm so glad Robin's finally making friends. I hear him up there with other children almost every afternoon." Laurie looked up from her newspaper. "Other children?" "Oh yes, ma'am. Multiple voices. They sound like they're having a wonderful time playing together." Laurie set down her coffee cup slowly. "Mrs. Henderson, Robin doesn't have friends over. He's always alone up there." The maid's face went pale. "But ma'am, I hear at least 5 or 6 different people talking, clear as day." That afternoon, Laurie stood at the bottom of the attic stairs and listened. Mrs. Henderson was right. Multiple voices. Distinct. Different. A conversation happening between what sounded like at least 6 different people. She climbed the stairs slowly, carefully, avoiding the creaky steps. The voices got louder, clearer. She stopped outside the closed attic door. "General MacArthur, with all due respect, your strategy is going to get us into a war we can't win." The voice was sharp, political, surprisingly sophisticated for a child's game. Then another voice, deeper, gruffer. "Mr. President, you don't understand the situation on the ground. The Chinese are mobilizing. We need to act now." "Gentlemen, please." A third voice, refined, British. "Perhaps we can find a diplomatic solution that satisfies both." "Diplomacy?" A fourth voice, thick Brooklyn accent. "Yeah, that worked real well with Hitler, didn't it?" Laurie's hand went to her mouth. These weren't children playing. This was something else entirely. She pushed the door open, just a crack, and peered inside. Robin sat in the center of the attic floor, surrounded by hundreds of toy soldiers arranged in precise formations. He was moving between them, picking up different soldiers, giving each one a distinct voice, a personality, a position in an elaborate drama he was constructing in real time. As Laurie watched, Robin shifted from the presidential figure to the general, changing his posture, his facial expression, even the way he held his small body. For an 8-year-old, the transformation was startling, unnatural, brilliant, and deeply unsettling. He wasn't playing, he was performing, giving a theatrical production to an audience of plastic soldiers arranged in perfect rows, their painted faces frozen in permanent attention. And Robin performed with the intensity and commitment of a trained actor. His emotions were real: anger, fear, hope, frustration, all flickering across his face as he inhabited each character. He'd been doing this for hours. Laurie could see the elaborate battle formations, the way certain soldiers were positioned as if in mid-conversation, the story that had clearly been developing over days, maybe weeks. Laurie stood in the doorway for nearly 20 minutes, unable to move, barely breathing. She watched her 8-year-old son create an entire world, complete with conflicts, alliances, betrayals, resolutions. She watched him argue with himself in 6 different voices, negotiate peace treaties between toy armies, deliver emotional speeches about honor and sacrifice. And she watched him do all of this completely alone, in the oppressive silence of a mansion where no one else was home. The thing that broke her heart the most was the commitment in his performance. Robin wasn't half-assing this. He was giving everything. Every character got full emotional depth. The British diplomat's desperation for peace, the general's rage at being undermined, the president's exhaustion from impossible choices. An 8-year-old child was channeling emotions and psychological complexity that shouldn't be accessible to someone his age. Where had he learned this? How did he know how to do this? Robin picked up a Civil War soldier, switched to a Southern accent. "Colonel, we can't hold this position. We've lost half our men. We need to retreat." Then another voice, higher pitched, younger. "Sergeant, if we retreat, they'll hunt us down. We make our stand here." Laurie felt tears running down her face. She suddenly understood. Robin wasn't playing. He was surviving. The silence of this massive, empty house was crushing him, and the only way he knew how to fight it was to fill it with voices, to create companions who would talk to him, argue with him, need him. He'd built an entire civilization inside his head because the real world was too quiet, too lonely, too vast and empty. And then Robin turned and saw her. His face went white. The Southern accent cut off mid-sentence. The toy soldier dropped from his hand. For a moment, mother and son just stared at each other. And then Robin's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry." His voice was small, terrified. "I'll be quieter, I promise. I didn't mean to be loud. I'm sorry." Laurie's heart shattered. Her son thought he was in trouble, thought he'd done something wrong. She stepped into the attic, knelt down among the toy soldiers, and pulled Robin into her arms. "Sweetheart, you're not in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong." Robin was shaking. "I was being too loud. I know I'm supposed to be quiet. Seen, not heard. I forgot. I'm sorry." Laurie held him tighter. Seen, not heard. That was what she'd always told him. The rule of the house. Children should be seen, not heard. Well-behaved, polite, quiet. She'd been raising him the way she was raised, the way wealthy families in Bloomfield Hills raised their children. But she'd never understood what that rule was doing to him. She'd never realized that silence, for a child like Robin, was a form of suffocation. She pulled back, looked into his eyes. "Robin, what you were doing just now, where did you learn that?"
"Learn what?"
"The voices, the characters, the way you were performing." Robin looked confused. "I don't know. I hear them in my head, and then I make them come out."
"How many voices can you do?"
Robin thought about it. "I don't know. A lot.
Maybe 30, 40? I can do more if I practice.
Laurie felt dizzy. 40 voices. An 8-year-old child could do 40 distinct character voices. And you do this every day, up here by yourself?
Robin nodded. Is that bad?
No, baby, it's not bad. Laurie chose her next words carefully. But can I ask you something? Why do you do it? Why do you talk to the soldiers?
Robin looked down at the toy armies surrounding them. Because they listen. They don't go away. They're always here. He paused. And when I'm talking to them, I don't feel so alone.
There it was, the truth she'd been avoiding. Her son was desperately, achingly lonely. She and Robert had given him everything money could buy, this beautiful house, expensive toys, the best schools, but they hadn't given him what he actually needed: presence, attention, connection. And in the absence of those things, Robin had done what any brilliant, creative child would do. He'd created his own world, a world where he was never alone because he could be everyone, every voice, every character, every friend he didn't have. Laurie made a decision in that attic, surrounded by plastic soldiers and the ghosts of her son's imaginary companions. She couldn't be home more. Her social obligations, her identity, her entire life was built around those commitments. And Robert couldn't travel less. His career, their lifestyle, everything depended on his work. But she could give Robin something else. She could give him an outlet, a place where this extraordinary, unsettling gift he had could be nurtured, where he could perform for real audiences instead of toy soldiers, where his voices could be celebrated instead of suppressed.
Robin, she said, still holding him, how would you feel about taking some acting classes?
Robin's eyes widened. Like in movies?
Like in theater, learning how to perform on a real stage with other kids. Would you like that?
For the first time in months, Robin smiled. Really smiled. Can I still do voices?
Baby, you can do all the voices you want.
The next week, Laurie enrolled Robin in his first drama class at the Detroit Community Theater. The teacher, a woman named Margaret Chen, had been running children's theater workshops for 20 years. She'd seen hundreds of kids: shy kids who needed confidence, hyperactive kids who needed focus, talented kids who needed training. But she'd never seen anything like Robin Williams.
The first day of class, Margaret asked the children to introduce themselves and share what kind of character they'd like to play. Most kids said things like a princess, or a superhero, or a cowboy. When it was Robin's turn, he stood up and did 7 different character introductions in 7 different voices: a British butler, a New York mobster, a Southern belle, a German scientist, a French chef, a Russian spy, and a Midwest farmer, without pausing between them. The other kids stared. Margaret stared. Robin sat down, nervous. Was that okay?
Margaret had to sit down herself. Robin, how old are you?
8.
And where did you learn to do that?
Robin shrugged. My attic, with my soldiers.
Margaret pulled Laurie aside after class. Mrs. Williams, your son is extraordinary. I've never seen a child with that kind of range, that kind of control. It's not normal.
Laurie tensed. Is that a problem?
A problem? No, it's a gift. But I need to ask, is he happy?
Laurie thought about the attic, about 20 months of her son performing alone to plastic armies because the silence was too loud. He's getting there.
Over the next year, Laurie enrolled Robin in every opportunity she could find: drama classes, improv workshops, community theater productions, speech and debate. Robin absorbed everything like a sponge. He was the youngest kid in most classes by 3 or 4 years, but he was often the most talented. Teachers were amazed. Other parents were curious. Everyone wanted to know where this bizarre, brilliant little kid had come from.
Laurie never told them. She never explained about the attic performances, about the toy soldiers, about the day she discovered her son had been so lonely he'd created 40 characters just to have someone to talk to. People thought she was a stage mother, pushing her talented son into the spotlight. They didn't understand. This wasn't about ambition. This was about survival. Robin needed to perform the way other people needed to breathe.
And if Laurie could give him stages instead of empty attics, audiences instead of toy soldiers, maybe he'd be okay. Maybe he wouldn't disappear into his own head.
But here's what Laurie didn't anticipate. Here's the tragic irony she wouldn't understand until decades later, long after it was too late to fix. Those drama classes taught Robin that performing for others felt better than being alone. Way better. When he was on stage, kids laughed at his jokes. Teachers praised his talent. Audiences applauded. And Robin learned a devastating equation that would govern the rest of his life. Performing equals love. Being funny equals being valuable. Making people laugh equals mattering.
In the attic, Robin had performed to survive loneliness. On stage, he performed to earn affection. And somewhere in that transition, performing stopped being a coping mechanism and became an identity. Robin Williams, the person, began to disappear behind Robin Williams, the performer. The voices that had once been companions became a shield, a way to avoid ever being just Robin, just himself, because himself had learned very early that being himself wasn't enough, that he was only seen, really seen, when he was being someone else.
The drama classes worked. Robin made friends. He got better at social interaction. He came out of his shell. By high school, he was the class clown, always on, always performing, always making people laugh. By Juilliard, he was the manic genius everyone either loved or couldn't handle. By his 20s, he was a comedy phenomenon, and by his 30s, he was one of the biggest stars on the planet.
But despite all of it, the fame, the money, the adoration of millions, Robin Williams never stopped feeling like that 8-year-old in the attic, performing to silence, desperate to be heard, terrified that if he stopped being funny, if he stopped doing voices, if he stopped performing, people would leave, and he'd be alone again, back in that mansion, back in that attic, back with nothing but toy soldiers who couldn't love him back.
In the 2000s, during a therapy session Robin attended for depression, his therapist asked him to describe his childhood. Robin told the story about the toy soldiers, about creating 40 voices, about performing in the attic. And the therapist asked a question that stopped Robin cold. When was the last time you performed just for yourself? Not for an audience, not for approval, just because you wanted to.
Robin sat there for a long moment. Then he started crying. I don't think I ever have. Even in the attic, I was performing for the soldiers. I've never just been without an audience.
Do you know how to be alone without performing?
Robin shook his head. No, I don't think I do. That was Laurie Williams's unintended legacy. She'd saved her son from loneliness by giving him stages, but she'd also taught him that he was only valuable when he was performing, that being Robin wasn't enough, that he needed to be 40 characters, 100 characters, 1,000 characters, anything but himself. When Robin Williams died in 2014, his wife, Susan, found something in his office, a small box on his desk. Inside were 3 toy soldiers, 1 Roman, 1 Civil War, 1 World War II, the same soldiers from the attic in 1959. Robin had kept them for 55 years, moved them from apartment to apartment, house to house, always keeping them close. Susan asked Robin's older brother about them. He told her the story, about the attic, about the voices, about how Robin had never really stopped performing for those soldiers. He'd just gotten better at hiding them.
Today, drama teachers around the world use Robin Williams as an example of natural genius, of raw, untrained talent that just emerged fully formed. But that's not what happened. Robin Williams wasn't born a performer. He was made into one, by loneliness, by silence, by a desperate need to fill empty space with something, anything that sounded like connection. The 40 voices weren't a gift, they were a survival mechanism. And the tragedy is that the thing that saved him as a child, performing to feel less alone, became the thing that destroyed him as an adult, because he never learned how to be alone without performing. He never learned that he could be valuable just being himself.